keynote discussion this morning, please welcome Juliet Corsanita, Head of Convergent Video Investment at Camelot, Strategic Marketing and Media, and Fred Godfrey, co-founder and CEO of Origin.
Whoops. I know. Who did we pay? I can't remember. Okay, well, to kick off, Mark, that discussion, what you just said was pretty heavy. So I think we might, it was full of meat. And something I was going to say that's unrelated to this topic, hang on, let's do a little bit. There we go. Was that, we are at this intersection, but at the moment, in my mind, it's an intersection that has no traffic lights, no policemen, and no lines, and that's the problem. We're all just driving into each other. But anyway, on with the show. I'm going to have to use some crib notes to start this off because there's so much that we want to talk about today. And I'm really grateful to you, Juliet, for coming up from
Thanks for having me.
Orange County. Is that right? Oh, you need to.
I think so. Okay. Now I'm on. Can you hear me?
Thank you. No, you'll just have to.
Really loud. That's okay. Thank you. Okay. Yes, that's so much better. Hi, thanks for having me. And great to finally meet you, Fred, after we've been on many video calls, but it's been so nice to have this time in person and with all of you too.
Well, thank you. And what we're talking about today is something that means a lot to me as a very passionate OTTX member at Origin. One of the things that we believe in tremendously is what it does to bring the smaller and the medium-sized media owners and distributors together in an educational place, because it is a war out there. And as we heard yesterday through a lot of the discussions, there are thousands of channels up there vying, for attention. But not only are they struggling to get the distribution and the space and the visibility they need, which I know you're going to raise a little bit today, but also they need to make money, right?
Sure.
And that is difficult. And so what we're going to try and discuss today, if we're able to stay on piste, and there's a good chance that we'll veer off here and there, is that connected TV, or FAST, as this week's really been about, is becoming an essential source of nutrients for the industry that feeds everything that we all do, content, right? But it's predominantly supported by ad-supported, television. But the way that we see it, and the reason why, I wanted to frame the discussion this way, is that there's kind of like, if you can have it, there's almost like a triple-edged sword, if you will, for all of these media owners, when it comes to being successful in this really competitive space.
It's really dark with the war and the triple-edged sword.
I'm just building, a bit of vibe here. But, firstly, there's the agency perception and understanding of, I say the smaller, I'm not wishing to belittle them, but, the people who aren't sort of the Hulu and the Peacock and all of those folks, the media owners' resources and capabilities to get in front of you. And of course, the fact that they're fighting for the same dollars as these behemoths. So my question to you in a nutshell, which we'll try and break out, and then I can stop cheating off my crib sheet, is, how do these people really get your attention? And what are the obvious and less obvious things they may not be thinking about that they really need to know before and during and after they've had the opportunity to speak to you? Like, this is a really unique opportunity for a lot of people in this room, for you to really share as a media buyer, what is it that you're truly looking for? But before that, how do they get you to discover them?
Yeah, it's not an easy task, and I would say it's very similar to the relationship you're trying to build with viewers. It's, being honest, preparing and saying what you really are your core competencies. What are you bringing to the table? How are you helping us find solutions for our clients? And I'm on many, many calls throughout the day and week where we get pitched a lot of different ideas and different opportunities, and so often I'm lost in that conversation from the get-go. There just hasn't been the proper setup to establish who you are, what you do, what you don't do, and being clear about that and transparent will help us start to form a trusting relationship.
So to that end, when you say what you do and what you don't do, right, like something that we've talked about before is, you know, be sort of loud and proud about what you are.
Yeah,
and
own
don't
it.
try to be everything, and don't worry about what you're not, right?
Absolutely. No, own what you do. I mean, when I'm hearing from, you know, different sellers in the space, I'm considering all the different clients that Camelot has. And we have everything from retail clients to digital clients, you know, some big consumer brands and some lesser known brands. And so at any point in time, I'm filtering in my mind the different opportunities that we're looking for. And certainly it's my job too to brief you clearly once we get to that stage. But before we even get there, I need to understand, you know, what are your core competencies that you play in? And it's better not to sort of try to be a jack of all trades and please everyone. I think the faster you can get to your true source of, you know, content, viewers, targeting, technology, scale, even if you're growing, because I know a lot of what we're, you know, the folks we're talking to today may not be of the scale of, you know, a Netflix. So just own up to that. That transparency is really key.
And how much should that worry them, right? You know, there are a lot of channel owners out there, right, where like to get from A to success, you've got to travel that course. Sure. And, you know, that starts by launching your channel and having one viewer, which is mum, because you've told her to make sure she watches
Sure.
it, right? To 1,000, to 1 million. And while there's the deeper problem of the discovery issue, how concerned should you know, a media seller be if, let's say, they have, you know, sort of 5 million or 10, 20 million opportunities a month versus the 8 billion that you're being offered by someone else?
Well, a lot of it is your trajectory, right? You're growing, you're healthy, you're catching fire. Viewers are finding your content and it's relevant to them. So you can be small, but still be demonstrating that growth, and that's gonna get our attention, particularly if you're speaking to an audience that we need to reach, so.
Right, exactly. So something you said to me, you know, was you'll often be pitched, and after this I want to reverse back to something which I think is difficult, and coming from the pub side myself at Newsy, you know, where I was sort of responsible for distribution, not ad sales, you know, it's, oh, fuck, I forgot, that's Fred, I've just literally forgotten what I was going to say. But it'll come back to me in a minute, but...
you need your crypt notes still.
Yeah, well, no, we've gone off piste already, to be honest with you. But what I actually will get back to is how they actually, you said that they don't need to worry, you know, about, if they give the pitch and they're concise, right? You know, you said to me once, you said, if we don't need what they're selling today and it's clear what they have,
sure,
we may need it down the road.
Absolutely. I mean, at any given point in time, I mean, clients' objectives change and progress and evolve, and sometimes they're looking for something that's more of a performance strategy, and other times they need a reach play and you're launching a big new product and need an introduction, but other times it's okay to have that kind of smaller but mighty, you're turning the performance, we're seeing whatever KPIs that client's looking for, we're seeing success. Again, own who you are, and we're going to hopefully develop that relationship where we come back, and if a client's strategy is evolved and now you're a better fit, if we'd said no before, it doesn't mean no forever. You want to open that door and tell your compelling story and get us interested.
Right, and just keep it concise from the get-go, right?
Yeah, clear. It doesn't even, I mean, I think it's clear more than it even is concise, although they could be the same thing. What do you do? Who do you speak to? What's the audience? What's your growth plan? And what new and distinct offerings do you make that will pique our interest?
And so to that end, you told me a story this morning, I think, that really plays into that fact. So this was back when you were at Taco Bell, not ordering food, but actually getting other people to...
Oh, we were made to work there too, so you might have seen me in the drive-thru.
That is so rock and roll. You told me a really fascinating story from back in your Taco Bell days. I think, to your point about being unique to who you are, right? And at that point, this particular sort of seller was very nascent at the time, and in a similar place to a lot of the channels today. I don't want to spoil it, but could you just sort of...
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I was at agency side years ago at the beginning of my career, and then I spent 20 years at Taco Bell on the brand side. So before heading to Camelot, and I've been there for 5 years, I tend to look at things through both the client angle and the agency angle, which I think is sometimes beneficial, sometimes maybe annoying. But this story has to do with when Adult Swim, who, now a household name and everyone's aware and killing it in, adult 18 to 49, or 18 to 34 world and 18 to 49 world. But at the time, they were this very little known cable network. And, we already had to convince franchisees to depart from broadcast as eyeballs were shifting to cable, why they should take chances on some of these lesser known networks. But when Adult Swim came in, they had to pitch their story. They were small but growing. They had a very distinct voice. They know who they knew who they were. I think they still do. And they really owned that. They weren't going to be for everyone. But at that time, Taco Bell took a chance on them, and we ended up doubling year over year over year our investment with them, because as they grew, we were there early. They, as I keep repeating the same words, they had that distinct voice. They had clarity of the audience that they were trying to reach. They were well aligned with the brand because they were very left of center. They had that kind of wink and, didn't take things too seriously. And yet, they had a vast amount of programming that is not for everyone. I wasn't watching it at the time. I was a young mom. I was like, that's for the kids, for the teen kids, meaning the young adults. But it was perfect for our young adult target. And that's just, I think it's a similar path to where some of you might be today, where, you're small, but if you know where you are and who you reach and what you stand for, make that compelling story, and, then the relationships will come.
Exactly, and then Taco Bell will be like, oh shit, right? And but I mean,
we looked brilliant, but it was accidental excellence.
But it takes courage as well, right? To actually to make that change, because something that we see a lot at the company is a lot of, let's just carry on doing it the way we do, right? Let's just stick with the what we knows, the who we knows, and know that we'll do a good job for our client, because it'll all match and meet the KPIs and expectations.
There's definitely people out there doing that. I actually think Camelot's pretty good at working with clients who are willing to test and try out new things, and that's sometimes where the relationship needs to start. Is we're going to do a test, and we're going to hopefully be as clear as possible with what those KPIs are, and that's why we're really going to vet, are you the right partner to do that test with? But hopefully that plants the seed, and you can't keep doing the same thing. That we're definitely not living in those times.
And how can a media owner make that easier for you? What can they do to make you feel more comfortable testing your clients' budgets? Because it's a different world that you're in now, right? Like at Taco Bell, where you were the brand, now you're an agency that is going to be held accountable for what you do. So you feel like you're under even more scrutiny, and that you've really got to make sure you deliver. What is it that a media owner or distributor or a service can do? How can they grease the skids and make you feel safer by placing that bet? Yeah,
I mean, a little bit of skin in the game certainly helps. Doing things like the last presenter, Otera, showed of, you don't necessarily always need to reduce your CPM. That's not, that doesn't all get us all to the right place, but when you can add value, when you can be very clear and transparent about reporting and consistently reporting, and be ready to pivot if things aren't doing as well. Again, it's a test. It's usually not going to be a tremendous amount of money, but it's going to give us both a chance to, date and kind of have a couple of those first dates and see if we want to progress the relationship.
Exactly. So it's like you'll make sure that enough is spent to give you a read.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that's our job too in working with you, is making sure we don't test something that, from the get-go is not going to work, that doesn't do anybody any service. So yeah, it needs to be a fair try, and we need to be clear at what we're trying to achieve, and you need to be clear whether or not you can help address those needs. And if not, it'll be for another day. I think we were talking at one point, silly kind of off the topic, but it came around to this, is I'd recently been at the new Academy Museum that's here in LA. I live in Orange County, so close enough to the area, and I hadn't seen it. So it was right after the Oscars, and I'm like, oh, let's go up and check out this new museum. They had an exhibit on The Godfather. And sure, I'm aware of The Godfather. Everybody knows The Godfather, great film, great series of films. But there and gone, I don't really think about it much. But we went to the exhibit. They had this really in-depth, into the scripts and into the production and into the writer's notes and into the casting and the, costumes and all these things. And all of a sudden, I was renewed with this interest. And it's a little bit the conversation that we as buyers have with you all. We may be aware of you, but at a certain point in time, something kind of sparks. You reveal more about who you are, what your network does, and the content providers, that you have, and all of a sudden it can kind of catch that interest, and the conversation then deepens. So anyway, subsequently I went back and watched all 3 films with my husband, and I was like, these are brilliant. How did I not appreciate this as much? But some of it was revealing kind of the insights into, in that case, The Godfather. If you can do that with, the content that you have, that's where you're going to bring us into the conversation.
Right, because you feel, like they're actually invested and passionate about what it is that they're trying to entertain the world with.
Yeah.
And you're saying that as a buyer, you can actually get wrapped up in that, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. I think, you said, don't just come and sell me a good CPM and XYZ, tell me what it is that you do.
And you have to do it first. I mean, in that exchange, in that dating relationship, you have to come to the table first. I'm not going to brief you before I know anything about you. So first is sharing where, what you do, where, again, your strengths are. And then we're going to get to that point where now I can give you some meat to go, digest around an idea and put together a proposal. But that's the exchange. Oftentimes I get on the phone with people and it's like, so tell us about your clients. What's everyone trying to accomplish? That's not how that's going to work.
That's something you said in one of our earlier calls that I thought was really interesting. It's like, if you're asking me to tell you what I need, then you're just going to parrot back what I need.
Yeah.
And that's not going to fly. Mm-hmm. You kind of want to hear their story from their perspective, almost without knowing what it is that you need, right? And then you will be able to discern between, well, that's just someone who is literally just selling spots and dots, and these are people who are invested in this entertainment experience, and just get your imagination running. Like we are in the entertainment business, whether we're advertisers or media owners or the plumbing in between, which I want to touch on, even though everyone knows it.
And you've already got our attention, right? We understand the shift. We're already going there. So,
exactly.
That part of the conversation, the foundation's already been laid. So.
And that was actually kind of going to be my first question, but is, it's difficult to get your attention, right? It's difficult to get a call with you as a media seller.
Squirrel.
What does it take,
new.
Right? You're getting 100 calls a day from people that would love to sell you their channel. Our agency people, are you just particularly prone to loving cold emails, or is it, how does someone actually...
Special folder for those.
what way does someone put up their hand really to go, hey, we'd like you to know that we exist. Forget the pitch. How do they actually get their foot in the door at all with you? Or is it just about persistence?
Well, I mean, conferences like this are really helpful, just to get a face and a name, do a little research, right? It's not hard to, find out the people you're going to speak with on the phone and a little bit about their background and the clients that they work on. You can, obviously get a lot out there before you've even had that first email or that first phone call. But yeah, you've got to be clear in that initial reach out. What are you offering? What are your solutions? How could you potentially help us? Even though you don't know exactly what we're trying to do, we're trying to grow clients' business. There's a lot of different ways we're going to go about that, but.
I just had a really brilliant or terribly shit idea. But do you know what could be quite cool? I was just wondering, do you ever sort of go home at the end of the day, put up your leg, and I wasn't meant to highlight that.
I know, thanks.
I'm really sorry. Juliet had some major surgery very
ACL
recently,
surgery.
and we're incredibly grateful to her for being here. Do you ever go home, pour a really stiff gin and tonic, and actually just surf and discover content and channels and go, gosh, that's an interesting looking channel. I know I might need that for, a client. And then sort of, can people get on your radar that way simply because we are consumers? We all exist on television, which is the most discoverable place, which is something else that we'll discuss because discoverability is a big fat problem.
I wish I had more time to do that. I don't do that enough, but I read a ton. So the more that you, I know they had, some folks from Ad Age here during yesterday's portion of the conference. So the more that you can get, I think, in the industry press, that's an important place. Being at conferences, we always have somebody from Camelot is at almost every conference, and more are getting on our radar like this one. So that's really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? There is an element of sort of pay to play, if you will, which is tough. Speaking as a bootstrap business, we spent the first 3 years of our life not attending or paying or doing anything just while we got off the ground. And, and then we tried to sort of earn our way into this by being unique.
Yeah.
And, and that helped us get on people's radars. But that's not easy. That's the longest, slower route. And the problem the media, the channel owners have is that it's a very expensive place to be.
Yeah.
And so
if you're good though, and if again, and good doesn't have to be huge, right? I still think
that's a quote.
It used to be, I say this a lot, that it used to be big beat small, then that's been proven wrong. Small players can actually get a lot of attention. Fast beats slow, I think that's still true. And I don't mean fast in the way that we're all here. I mean with speed, being, enabling the process to go smoothly. And then now it's easy beats hard. So be easy to work with. And that means don't make me pull information out of you. I don't know where I was going with this,
but
actually,
that leads perfectly onto where I wanted to go next, which was, while everyone knows that I really don't like talking about pipes and plumbing, in fact, I'm very anti-pipes and plumbing, as people who know me know, but being easy to work with, again, is not just being simple and concise in your value prop, but also, how can these folks who are trying to sell you their inventory, what are some of the basics that they might already know but should make sure is positioned correctly in terms of
and we have kind of a checklist. I would say it's not physically a checklist, but the sort of things that we're looking for, what sort of technology do you have that you're enabled, or those partners that we also work with. We'll share who we work with and ensure that we're going to have a good attribution process or be able to read the results the way we need to. And different clients use different tools, so it's not like there's just one. We're not a one tool sort of shop. So, I think that's, it's going to be different, bespoke to each client, but, do you have frequency caps? What are some of those essential kind of table stakes items that we can clear out of the way that aren't going to be a problem? And again, some clients are not as risk adverse. They want to test new things because they like being first. Yeah. And Camelot as an agency, we have a saying about being first, best, only. So we're not going to be averse to trying some new things, but you are going to have to tick some boxes along the way.
I'm going to come to that in a minute, actually, but a sort of a slightly sideways question to what we were just talking about, more as a personal curiosity as anything, but how much of the buying that you do is sort of direct IO, like, absolutely sort of soup to nuts managed versus something that you want to put through some programmatic pipes, like, is it a bit of a mishmash? Is it very much, it's a, rule-based, like if it's a certain client, a certain campaign, it's one way versus another, or seasonal? Or
I would say in general, we're definitely heavily weighted towards programmatic as an agency. And the way that Camelot kind of operates is I lead the convergent video team, but I'm helping bring you all in the door and get ideas generated, and then bring in our programmatic traders who are going to be the experts at all the pipes. And so, yeah.
And what is it about it being programmatic that you prefer? Is it just that, is it the checks and balances? Is it the reporting? Is it the control that you retain, or that you get to see?
Yeah, I think it's the ability to optimize in real time. I think we're a very data-centric agency, as a lot of people propose to be. We do work with a lot of performance-type clients. The parts of the business that I retain and by myself are the ones that are more direct, as well as anything we might be doing in linear, which is predominantly live sports at this point. Depending on if there's pass-through automatically or not, I'll bring in the programmatic team to help accentuate what we might be doing. But I think the flip has already occurred, where it used to be you'd plan out the linear budget and then we'd go, okay, well, what's left, and we'll fill in with streaming. That's not the case anymore. It absolutely is a convergent video look from the beginning, but I think the scale that has grown throughout CTV has enabled us to go more OTT and CTV first, and then layer in with everything else.
That's a thought I just had, because we have an interesting discipline at work, which is one of the reasons, again, why I'm a fan of OTTX. And my opinion on this is really clear. Like, when people look at our media portfolio, the partners that we work with, it ranges from very, very small and niche players to the big guys. And it's because, our general methodology, and I want you to challenge this if you think we're wrong, fucking hope not, but like, is, it's not about one particular channel or outlet having the scale that you need, right? Yeah. You've got all of it. Our philosophy is it's about people over product. It's about, between all of these channels, with their small, medium, niche, large, adult swim, junior swim, like whatever it is, like it doesn't matter that, if as long as you as a media owner are in that equation, and and you're on the list, like that's the win, right?
Yeah,
because should that mean that they should worry less about their own scale?
Yes, I think it's true. Scale's a benefit, right? It helps you get in the door
dollars
and all of those things later on. But at the same time, we're understanding and working with a brand the different audiences that they're trying to reach. And sometimes it's a very, very specific target. And the more specific that target, the more we may be willing to go and partner with someone who's a little bit smaller, but the composition is there of that target so great that, we wouldn't want to ignore that opportunity.
Right, because, and to that end as well, right, if it's sort of a specific audience, which obviously is dictated by the type of content they're watching, something that, again, we explore, and I'm curious to know how much you explore it, is also, there's a lot of content out there it's sort of quite passive viewing, and there's a lot of content that's incredibly, like, proactive viewing, and, and things like, anime, for example. We know, like, when someone switches on and watches anime, they're really, really probably actually, truly watching it glued to the TV at whatever hour it is, versus someone that might have something on more in the background. Do you, how do you discern between those, or do you hope that they will tell you how engaged or attentive their audiences are?
Yeah, it's both sides. There's a limit to how much we know about that sort of consumption behavior, so we're looking for some transparency in that space. But, if you're looking for a very specific, let's say one of our clients is Michael's, and you're looking for someone who's, crafting prior to the holidays, that's a very specific target. You don't want to go out there and waste a lot of money with big scale opportunities when you are looking for a very specific target. Same with Experian is another one of our clients, and they're looking for a certain sort of, let's say, new to credit sort of person, thin filers, they sometimes call them. And so, you know, again, the more that we can attract the right viewer through the content that you have, and again, you disclosing more insights into who's coming for that content, then you're in the consideration pool.
Do you ever have a situation to that end where, like, you have a client that is got a really specific need, and it's actually like the content that they're watching is actually nothing to do with the equation, but it's all the other considerations of how you're going to try and target that consumer? And, you know, because what I want to try and establish here is kind of like understanding if there is like a sort of a spectrum of value in terms of, you know, the content, like something that I've preached a lot since I left, you know, since the Newsy days, and while we were building Origin, we were advising a few folks, as I said, just make sure that you find a territory that is out there and unique that no one else is filling. Really be very, very good at it, and stay focused on that and keep it fresh and clean and keep it, you know, strong and growing. But of course, that means going incredibly bespoke. So you can have very bespoke channels that have really vast audiences, you know, which will be great for a client who really wants audiences who consuming that content. But do you also have clients where it's like the content actually isn't the important part of the equation, it's other factors and other considerations?
Yeah, audiences. I mean, I tend to be a content first sort of view, but that's because my background was more predominantly in linear.
Yeah, that's important.
But yeah, but you know, contextual relevance and all of those things are great, and they have a place within a media strategy. But I think a lot of times they're looking for audiences, and then they're looking for conversion, or they're looking for, you know, a click to a QR code or a download of an app. So sometimes the content isn't as important. I think that's actually part of the role that I play, is to ensure that our programmatic traders are considering content as well when it makes sense.
Okay, that's really, I love how you put that, and I love how you threw in QR there, because that gets me to my next question. You know,
the old QR code that was
the QR thing, yeah,
of the past, and then it's like new
back,
again.
and then it's old, then it's back, and then it's old, and then it's back. Yeah, I mean, that's why, you know, plug here, but we did this survey over the end of last year where we asked 7,000 households, like, how do you actually feel when you see a QR code? Are you like disgusted, or are you ambivalent, or whatever? And we think that the knowledge we gain back from that is going to be what helps us, you know, sort of make it an engagement mechanism. But to that end, right?
We all got trained through COVID. When you went to a restaurant, you could only get the menu through
exactly.
the QR
Every time I
code.
see it on TV, I'm expecting a beer to turn up.
We should we should tie the restaurants in. They really taught America how to use the QR code.
Yeah, thanks, COVID. But, you know, not wishing to at all point us in our direction because we're in the business of it, but something that you talked about on previous calls, which I want to hear, again, sort of speaking to the distributors and the media owners, is ad innovation, right? How is it that a channel owner, media owner, you know, someone out there with their fast channel, what can they do? What do you mean by ad innovation from their perspective? Do you mean they come up and they invent something new, or they change the way that they format their breaks, or they form partnerships with people like Origin to give you something cool? What is it that you mean?
Yes, all those things. And I think, you know, again, Otera, I hope I'm saying the name right, you know, and I just was introduced to them through that presentation this morning, so that was great. One of the benefits of coming to a conference like this. But they showed a lot of ad innovation, a lot of, you know, creativity of the, you know, kind of overlays and ways to retain a viewer during a break. I think, you know, we've seen the double box and all these different opportunities, but I think those are all things we're looking for. If you're small, but you have some distinct characteristics like that, those are ways to stand out. Not everybody's going to be able to do that. maybe they charge for it and we can't afford to add some of those extra layers.
Yeah.
So those are ways that you can carve out, you know, a differentiation.
Yeah, well done, Stephen. I think, I mean, Otera, I definitely paid a lot of attention to that. And, you know, it was interesting because you're right. There aren't a lot of, you know, sort of independents who can invest in doing that themselves.
Yeah. That on ESPN is going to be, you know, require a major buy. So
Right. Yeah.
demonstrating that we can unlock some of those opportunities for a lower out-of-pocket is going to definitely put you, you know, ahead of some others that are just spots.
Sorry, I cut you off. But it also then begs like a potential bigger question, right? Is that you can bring something to market and introduce, you know, Juliet from Camelot to it, but it's new and they don't have a case study against it, you know, and, you know, like, are you the person that says, this is absolutely perfect, but I need a case study to feel comfortable doing it?
No.
Or do you go, this is new to market, okay, you don't have a case study, we can take a little bit of risk and then go back to what we were saying earlier?
I would say every client's different, but we know the ones that we work with that are going to be more willing to, you know, kind of have that trial and error. A lot of times we'll even say, we want to lean in, and if there's press around this, sure, if it's successful for us, then you can even include us in that. There's an upside that we're looking for both of us. So no, I think we need to help you by knowing our clients' business well enough to say, these are the ones that are going to be open to trying something new, that don't need proof positive. We'll prove it out during the course of our test.
And just hope it doesn't go really, really wrong.
Well, that's where the transparency comes in. But yeah, there's always going to be a little bit of risk.
Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things when I'm wheeled in, unfortunately, for one of our sellers into a pitch because, you know, it's a big opportunity, they really try to avoid letting me anywhere near the client because I will just say what I think, you know, and what I said to, you know, Dave Spencer at General Motors was like, you know, how do you feel about failing? Like, do you dare to fail? And he said, well, yeah, but to an extent, right?
We used to always say, fail fast. And again, not to use fast in the wrong context, but fail fast and learn something.
Yeah, there needs to be like a comma there. It's like, let's eat grandma. Let's eat grandma. Yeah, fail fast, ...
Yeah, we live in too innovative of times for everything to, you know, require a case study. It's just not going to be possible, so.
Well, exactly. I mean, it was an uphill struggle for us, and I'll be honest, like for anyone thinking about ad innovation, like we went from 0 to 30 case studies, and it really doesn't actually change anything. You know, it just means you can, when they ask, do you have case studies question, you can say yes. Yeah. And then they move on. Like,
because most, you know, ad agencies are going to say, well, I want to do exactly that same thing. Gosh, I hope not, rinse and repeat, you know.
Yeah, exactly. And as we come up a little bit on time, because also want to see if there's a few seconds for anyone here with questions, because this is a pretty unique opportunity. And thank you again for making the drive, you know, or most of you there. But do you see, I mean, like, you know, I'm a very irritating individual in the landscape, you know, because I really hate the status quo and standing still, right? And, you know, and I also think, and it's our general sort of proverb at the company that, you know, for 75 years, and Mark talked about like hard ad breaks, which are unacceptable as it is, but like the ad break, the format of the ad break itself feels to us really archaic. You know, we're not in a generation where people were selling soap 7 decades ago. We're in the ADD generation where everyone's got a phone in their hand. And yes, they may prefer you know, somebody may prefer ad-supported TV over paying multiple subscriptions, but that doesn't really mean that they like advertising, right? And I think that that's, you know, so this is something that we really, really try to address by making it not advertising, but actually making it a content-based experience. That's what we do. You know, we're storytellers, right? And you know, a few months ago, when I put my hand up and I said to a room full of 200 ad tech people, like, can someone tell me when the ad stopped mattering in advertising, right? Because it's just all about everything in between, you know, but the story does matter. And for that,
I'm going to interrupt you because I'm thinking of an ad that my husband would constantly like pause and call me over when it would come on because he loved it so much. And it was the Visit Las Vegas, where the dad's reading to the son, and it's like all about broccoli. Exactly. And the way he says it, I mean, we will re-watch that ad over and over whenever it comes on because it's so good, and it's a story, and
So
it's
you were
very
really-
entertaining.
were you really happy when it ran 6 times back to back in a break then? You know?
Not so much that, but
You binge watched Visit Las Vegas.
no,
Yeah.
not that. But
It should have been Visit Florida that you really loved because
I
that
know,
was
I know. You told
that
me.
was us. But so to that extent, right? Like, you know, we're trying to sort of break the norm, and that requires ad innovation and creativity. Do you see a place in to everything we were just saying about, you know, if you want to stand out and be different, looking at what Otera does, and I actually, guys, I do struggle with your name a bit somehow, but I'm very dyslexic. Like, do you see it being a near-term, middle-term, or long-term thing where actually potentially sort of like creative technology or innovation or really, really, really different formats could actually start becoming almost the priority over the prevailing priorities? Or is it something that will just always sit as being, well, this is a really good way to stand out when I'm looking to buy?
yeah, I think certain brands absolutely will embrace that as a way to stand out because they make big swings, because they're willing to, you know, really, yeah.
They also want to be, in case it goes well, they want to say that they were the first.
Absolutely, absolutely. But you're also going to already, you know, we have this, and I'm not going to lie and say we don't. There's going to be certain advertisers that are all about performance, and they're all about those key metrics and conversions and, you know, attribution and, you know, the creative being a big story and cinematic experience is not as important. So we have to be okay with different brands have different priorities.
Yeah, and I guess it can be frustrating when a brand has really crappy priorities, and you've got to kind of like figure out how to navigate that to say, well, you know, I mean, when we were talking earlier, you know, you were saying, well, we have these brands where it's like, in this campaign, we want to accomplish awareness and performance and this and that. It's like, well, dudes, like...
Well, and back to, it may not fit today, but we might find an opportunity later. We have to be aware of all those capabilities that you have so that as we're hearing that, you know, the client's building their brief, and whether it's, you know, we're a media agency, so we might be working with an outside creative agency team or an in-house creative team at the client, to be able to say, oh, wait, right there, we have somebody we'd love to bring in, and let's produce this in concert with them. But if it's not on our radar, it doesn't get noticed, and, you know, now the lead time's not enough.
And so flipping that back to the people here, to the channel owners, right? Like, you're saying that if someone comes and you know, they manage to get their foot in the door and they manage to give you the pitch and they walk away empty-handed, so to speak, like, you really do remember them, right? If it's good, it's unique. Like, you really do.
If you had a good first meeting, absolutely. It's like hearing about a movie. Okay, I've heard about Oppenheimer coming out, and then it got delayed, and I hear about it here and there, and now I'm getting a little idea of different stars that are going to be in it. I'm really interested. But it's not like they've broken out with a huge ad buy yet. So, you know, you start small, but hopefully have your, you know, shit together on that first conversation, and there can be subsequent conversations, and then there's going to be a time maybe where it works out and the stars align and we work together.
That's it. Like, and that's sort of where I want to sort of conclude this, right? Like, A, have your shit together. That's the quote. That's the takeaway. But B, just be clear in who you are and make sure you stand out.
Yeah.
And, you know, if and when the day comes, it could be, and we've seen this when we've pitched agencies, we've felt like we've then been ghosted, and then suddenly 12 months down the road, hey guys, like, you know,
well, sometimes they get the wrong people on the phone call, right? So you have somebody who's, you know, either too esoteric or too into the pipes, or, you know, make sure you've got a sales team, an outward-facing sales team that has clarity on what it is your proposition is about. So get the right people on the phone. If it's a highly technical solution, then you want to have those people on the call along with somebody who's good at kind of the marketing sell. If it's, you know, make it easy for us to do business with you because we know what you stand for, and we put a little flag and go someday.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I want to see if there's a couple of questions for a couple of minutes, but if that's okay with Mark and Eric and Jose and the team. And yeah, I know I've got
and you have a plane to catch.
But when we were sort of writing our notes, one of the last things that you wrote when I said, "What are your final thoughts?" is kind of the two words which I feel, and I'm going to say them for you, I think are the biggest takeaway, which is you said, "Look inward." Right. Can you just explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we've said it, understanding who you are, what you represent, what are your solutions, do your own Q&A before you come to bring it public to us.
And then when they do, just you do you, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yep,
yeah,
can't pretend to be something else. I feel like all the kids today talk about being authentic, be authentic with what you offer as a solution and hold us accountable too. We should be able to, after we've had that conversation, share with you with all honesty and transparency, here's a couple brands I think we could have a fit, here's the timing for those things, let's have a subsequent conversation, and here's where it's not gonna be a fit. I'd rather get a quick no than be dragged around. Obviously, a quick yes is even better, but we can get to yes, but also, the relationship is two-way, and we need to be honest with you too if something's, don't focus there, focus on these brands.
Yeah, amazing. Juliet, thank you, and thank you so much for coming. I would love to open up to any questions if anybody has them. Oh, I see one over there. Yep.
Question for you, do you really see demand outpacing supply in connected TV? And then what's the actual understanding of fast in these pitches?
Okay, what type of fast?
Yeah, those questions were to Juliet, right?
Yes. Do I see demand outpacing supply? I mean, right now, demand is high. I think this is going to be a really interesting, we just came off of, upfront week and new fronts prior to that, and I think it's going to be a slow go at the beginning. We've got the whole debt ceiling and maybe a looming recession, and you've got the writer's strike, and, there's a ton of agitators in the environment right now. But, streaming is kind of the very first platform that we'll be looking up for our clients. Sports is the next one. So if you do both, that's really, you're moving up several notches. There's still a lot of saturation in the space. I do think there's a lot that, if a tree falls in the forest, there's a lot down on that programming guide that people never get to. So you've got to stand out. At some point, some will fail and some will get consolidated into other platforms. We talked a little bit about coming together the way that, cable networks did, and having a portfolio of assets is probably some protection.
A sort of a cooperative in a way, which I know I hear people talking about, and I understand its value.
Yeah, but I mean, in terms of is supply outpacing demand or
his
vice
question,
versa, I don't know, time will tell. This is going to be a very interesting ad year in terms of, I think clients are going to hang on to budgets a little bit longer, so it's going to be dragged out, and the writer's strike and subsequently a SAG strike, will add more drama to the whole situation. And then how do we understand fast? I hope I understand your question right. I mean, obviously free ad supported.
Expand on that. Do brands actually understand what they're buying in connected television, be it AVOD or FAST?
Yeah, I think they do to the extent that you've shared with us, or that we have that knowledge built up. Transparency on, beyond genre into actual programming is not where it should be. I mean, there's a lot of layers we'd like to get into that to make it comparable with some of the things that have been, foundational to linear. We're not there yet, but I do think that they understand. They certainly understand results. They're helped in understanding those results by whatever reporting metrics we can bring to bear with your help and with the tools that are in the industry that we all subscribe to. So.
And I just want to add a couple of my own thoughts to that as well before we have to clock off. One, will demand outstrip supply? Like, certainly not today, and certainly not tomorrow. There is a metric ton more supply than there is demand. But where demand could outstrip supply will be if, depending on, again, what it is that, if it's a certain type of supply, right?
Yeah.
And that's where there's going to be this sort of filtration.
Yeah. Sports has a lot of scarcity built in,
Exactly,
so there
and
definitely is going to be demand
something,
outstripping supply.
and something that my business partner said, which stuck, is that not all impressions are created equal.
Yeah.
Right? And so that is where there will be this sort of viscosity with the thick cream on top that everybody wants, down to something else, and it'll be then horses for courses. You'll have your few bucks here, and then you'll have your more expensive stuff there, and that will be a supply and demand by definition. And just to your point about the fast definition, like, I talk about this a bunch. I mean, as an industry, again, to what Mark said and what I said about this intersection without police and traffic lights, folks like the IAB do the best job they can, OTTX do the best job that they can, but as such a sort of fundamentally unregulated business, like, we just love making up acronyms and all creating our own definition of them.
Again, easy beats hard.
And I think a little bit of it is deliberately designed to confuse and mask what, or to basically make people feel like suddenly indispensable, and that's a challenge. So I really like that question.
Yeah, I mean,
it's a dangerous situation that we're in that regard.
One of my key rules at Taco Bell when I was there was to educate franchisees all the time and at that period of time, this was 5 years ago, and for the 20 years prior to that, talking about the progression and the evolution from broadcast to cable and cable to digital video and YouTube, and changing out strategies in their plans. So, a lot of that rolls on us as well as agencies and inform
there's a sort
clients.
of education pipeline. Absolutely. Juliet, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was
That was
wonderful.
fun.
Thank you, ATTX.